You have loved someone you could not have. Not because they rejected you, not because circumstances prevented it, not because timing was wrong or distance was too great, but because they existed just beyond your reach. Close enough to see, too far to touch, present enough to haunt you, absent enough to remain perfect. And you spent years, maybe your whole life, longing for them. Not because you believed you would ever have them, but because the longing itself became who you are. The longing shaped your thoughts, your choices, your sense of what matters. The longing made you who you are. And even now, even after all this time, even knowing it will never be fulfilled, the longing remains. Dante Alighieri understood this. He met Beatrice Porcinari when he was 9 years old. She was 8. They barely spoke. A glance, a moment, a child's encounter on a street in Florence, nothing more. And Dante spent the rest of his life writing about her. She married another man. She had a life. She died young, at 24. And Dante never stopped longing. Not for the woman she was, he barely knew her, but for the beloved she represented, the one who is always absent, always beyond reach, always the reason you keep moving forward, even when you know you will never arrive. This is not a love story. This is a philosophy of longing. And if you have ever loved someone you could not have, if you have ever carried a desire that could never be fulfilled, if you have ever felt that the person you long for is not just a person, but a doorway to something you cannot name, then you already know what Dante spent his life trying to say. That longing is not meant to be resolved. That the beloved you cannot reach is not a failure of love, but its purest form. That desire is not lack, it is presence. It is what makes you human. It is what moves you, and the moment it ends, you stop becoming. Before we go further, ask yourself this: who do you long for? Not just romantically, but existentially. What person, what place, what version of yourself do you reach toward that always remains just out of reach? And what would happen if you stopped trying to resolve it? If you accepted that the longing itself is not a wound to heal, but the structure of your life? Dante believed this. He built an entire cosmology around it. And he did so because longing was not abstract to him. It was the central fact of his existence. It shaped his poetry, his exile, his vision of the afterlife. And it began with a girl in a red dress. Dante Alighieri was born in 1265 in Florence, into a world of beauty and brutality. Florence was one of the great cities of Europe, wealthy, cultured, violent. A city of merchants and poets, of political intrigue and street warfare, of art and assassination. And Dante grew up watching it all. The beauty, the corruption, the way power shifts and loyalty dissolves. The way people live as if the world is permanent and then die suddenly, without warning, their lives unfinished. He was 9 years old when he first saw Beatrice. The story is famous, almost mythic. She was walking through the streets of Florence with her family. She was wearing a crimson dress, and Dante, a child, saw her and felt something he could not name. Not attraction in the adult sense, not desire as he would later understand it, but recognition, as if he had been waiting for her without knowing it, as if she completed something in him that he did not know was incomplete. He wrote later, in La Vita Nuova, The New Life, At that moment, I say most truly, that the spirit of life, which hath its dwelling in the secretive chamber of the heart, began to tremble so violently that the least pulses of my body shook with it. This is not romantic exaggeration. This is Dante trying to articulate something that would shape the rest of his life. That the beloved is not just another person. The beloved is the one who awakens you, who makes you aware for the first time that you are capable of longing, that inside you is a capacity for desire so vast it terrifies you. And from that moment, Dante carried Beatrice inside him, not as a person he knew, but as a presence, a symbol, an image of perfection that he would spend his life trying to understand. He did not see her again for 9 years, and when he did, the encounter was brief. He was 18, she was 17. She was walking across a bridge in Florence, accompanied by 2 other women, and she turned, looked at him, and greeted him. A nod, a word, nothing more. And Dante's soul caught fire. He went home. He could not sleep. He fell into a kind of fever dream, a vision in which love appeared to him as a lord, holding Dante's heart in his hands and feeding it to Beatrice. And when Dante woke, he began to write poetry, obsessive, devotional, metaphysical poetry, not about the woman Beatrice, but about the idea of Beatrice, the beloved who is always present and always absent, the one who makes you long and never lets you rest. But Beatrice was not his. She was engaged, and within a few years she married Simone de Bardi, a banker. She had a life, a husband, a home. And Dante watched from a distance, writing poems he could never send, constructing an entire philosophy around a woman he could not have. And then, in 1290, Beatrice died. She was 24 years old. The cause is unknown. Illness, perhaps? Childbirth? The records do not say. What matters is that she was gone. And Dante, 25, was left with nothing but the longing. Most people would have moved on. Most people would have grieved and let go. But Dante did not let go. He deepened. He turned the longing into art. He wrote La Vita Nuova, a book of poetry and prose that is part autobiography, part mystical vision, part meditation on the nature of love. And in it, he made a radical claim, that Beatrice's death did not end his love, it perfected it. Because now, she could never disappoint him. Now she could never become ordinary. Now she could remain what she had always been in his imagination, the perfect beloved, the one who exists not to be possessed, but to be longed for. This is Dante's first insight into the nature of longing, that the beloved is most real when absent, that desire is most pure when unfulfilled, that the moment you possess what you long for, the longing transforms into something else, familiarity, comfort, sometimes disappointment. But the beloved you cannot reach remains perfect, remains luminous, remains the reason you wake up in the morning and write poems and climb mountains and refuse to give up on the world. But Dante's life did not allow him the luxury of uninterrupted longing. History intervened, politics, violence, exile. Florence in Dante's time was torn apart by factional warfare. The Guelphs and the Ghibellines, the blacks and the whites. Families murdering each other over allegiances Dante barely cared about. He was a poet, not a warrior. But he was also a citizen, and citizenship in Florence meant choosing sides. Dante chose, and he chose wrong, or rather, his side lost. In 1302, when Dante was 37 years old, the Black Guelphs seized power in Florence, and Dante, aligned with the White Guelphs, was exiled, banished, told that if he ever returned to Florence, he would be burned alive. He never went home. He wandered Italy for the rest of his life, moving from city to city, dependent on the patronage of lords he did not respect, riding in borrowed rooms, always displaced, always longing not just for Beatrice, but for Florence itself, for the streets he walked as a child, for the city where he first saw the girl in the red dress, for the home he could never return to. And in exile, in bitterness and loneliness and grief, Dante began to write the Divine Comedy, an epic poem, a journey through hell, purgatory, and paradise, a vision of the afterlife. And at the center of it, guiding him through the final ascent to God, is Beatrice. Not the woman he barely knew, but the beloved who had always been absent, the one who exists to pull you forward, to make you climb, to transform you through longing. The Divine Comedy is not just a religious allegory. It is Dante's attempt to make sense of longing, to understand why we desire what we cannot have, why we spend our lives reaching for what always remains just beyond our grasp, and why that reaching is not futile. It is the point. The structure of the poem is simple. Dante, lost in a dark wood, descends into hell. He is guided by the Roman poet Virgil, who leads him through the 9 circles of hell, each one a deeper level of suffering, each one a reflection of human sin, human cruelty, human refusal to see. But hell is not punishment. Hell is clarity. It is the place where you finally see what you have been avoiding, the lies you told yourself, the harm you caused, the ways you betrayed yourself and others. Hell is the truth you refuse to face. And Dante walks through it, confronting each truth, each sin, each version of himself that he abandoned along the way. Then he climbs, out of hell, up the mountain of purgatory. This is the hardest part, not because the suffering is worse, but because in purgatory you are no longer avoiding the truth. You are living it. You are being purified. You are burning away everything that is not essential. And it hurts. Not the way hell hurts, but the way transformation hurts, the way becoming hurts. And only after Dante has descended into the depths, only after he has climbed the mountain, only after he has been stripped of everything false, does Beatrice appear. She does not appear in hell. She does not appear at the beginning of the journey. She appears in paradise, at the top of the mountain, at the threshold of the divine. And when she appears, she does not embrace him. She does not comfort him. She reproaches him. She looks at him and says, "Why did you stray? Why did you lose your way? Why did you forget what matters?" And Dante, standing before her, weeps, not because she is cruel, but because she is right. Because he had strayed, he had forgotten, he had allowed himself to be lost in the darkness, in the distractions, in the smallness of his own suffering. And Beatrice, the beloved, is the one who reminds him what he was always moving toward. This is Dante's deepest insight, that the beloved is not there to make you comfortable. The beloved is there to make you become, to pull you out of the darkness, to force you to climb, to refuse to let you settle for less than what you are capable of. And even in paradise, even at the end of the journey, Beatrice does not become his. She does not stay with him. She leads him to God, the ultimate beloved, the one who is always beyond, always infinite, always unreachable. And then she steps back. She returns to her place in the celestial rose, the mystical vision of the divine order. And Dante continues alone. Because this is what longing teaches, that the beloved is not the destination. The beloved is the guide, the one who shows you the way, the one who makes you climb. And the climbing is the point, not the arrival, the reaching, not the possession. Dante spent the rest of his life in exile. He never returned to Florence. He never saw Beatrice's grave. He died in Ravenna in 1321, far from home, still longing. For Florence, for Beatrice, for the life he did not get to live. And yet, the Divine Comedy became one of the greatest works of literature in human history, not because Dante found what he was looking for, but because he kept looking, because he turned longing into art, because he refused to let the absence of the beloved become the absence of meaning. And this is what Dante offers you, not resolution, not fulfillment, not the promise that your longing will end, but the recognition that longing is not lack. It is presence. It is life. It is what moves you forward. It is what makes you reach beyond yourself. It is what transforms you. You long for someone you cannot have, and you think this is a problem, a wound, a failure. But Dante would say, this is the structure of desire itself. That what you long for is always beyond you, that the moment you possess it, the longing transforms into something else, and without longing, you stop becoming. The beloved is not meant to be possessed. The beloved is meant to pull you forward, to make you climb, to make you write, create, suffer, transform, to make you who you are. And the absence of the beloved is not emptiness. It is the space where you become. Dante never touched Beatrice. He saw her twice. He spoke to her once, and she shaped his entire life, not because he had her, but because he longed for her. And the longing made him write, made him think, made him descend into hell and climb purgatory and reach toward paradise, made him become the poet who would articulate more clearly than anyone before or since what it means to live with desire that can never be satisfied. And maybe this is what longing is for, not to be resolved, but to keep you alive, to keep you reaching, to keep you becoming, to refuse to let you settle into comfort, into stagnation, into the death of desire. You have felt this. You have longed for something you could not name, a person who was more than a person, a place that felt like home, a version of yourself you've never been. And the longing did not go away when you achieved what you thought you wanted, because what you wanted was never the thing itself. It was the longing, the reaching, the movement toward what cannot be possessed. Dante understood this. He spent his life writing about Beatrice, not because he believed he would have her, but because longing for her made him who he was. The longing shaped him, transformed him, gave him a reason to write, to climb, to become. And maybe this is what longing is for, not to be satisfied, but to pull you forward, to make you reach beyond yourself, to keep you alive in a world that offers no final answers. The paradox is this: the moment you stop longing, you stop becoming. The moment you possess what you desire, the desire ends, and without desire, you are empty. So longing is not a wound, it is the condition of being alive. And the beloved you cannot reach is not absence, it is presence of the most real kind. Dante died in 1321, in exile, far from Florence, far from Beatrice's grave. He never returned home. He never touched her. He never stopped longing. And that longing became the Divine Comedy, one of the greatest works of literature ever written. Not because he found what he was looking for, but because he kept looking. This is what Dante offers. Not resolution, not fulfillment, not the promise that your longing will end, but the recognition that longing is not lack, it is life. It is what moves you. It is what makes you reach beyond yourself. It is what transforms you. So ask yourself, what are you longing for? What beloved can you not reach? What desire shapes you, pulls you, makes you who you are? And what would it mean to stop trying to resolve it? To accept that the longing itself is the gift, that the reaching is the point, that the beloved is always beyond. And that is not tragedy, that is grace. Dante never had Beatrice, but he had the longing, and the longing made him eternal. The beloved is always absent, and the absence is not emptiness, it is everything. If this reached you, if you felt the longing that never ends, if you've loved someone you could not have, if you've spent your life reaching for what remains just beyond your grasp, leave a word below. Tell me what you long for, what beloved shapes you. This is the deepest longing, and you're not alone in it. And if you want more philosophy for the soul, Camus' Invincible Summer, Jung's Shadow, Nietzsche's Will to Power, Dostoevsky's Love, subscribe. This is Heart's Country. We don't promise fulfillment. We offer the longing together.